Hi, and thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Asia Gaming Briefs face-to-face series. I'm joined today by gaming and hospitality expert Daniel Cheng. Daniel is a former Vice President of Business Development at Resorts World and a former Senior Vice President of Development for Hard Rock Hotels in Asia. Daniel, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Felix, thanks. Happy to be here.
So we're here ahead of this Sunday's elections in Yokohama. It's becoming pretty apparent that the winning candidate of the election could influence whether an integrated resort is going to go ahead in that city. So what can you tell us about the race so far? Who's in the running for the top spot?
It's really funny how things, come around because of the coronavirus, and now we're seeing that all the schedules are clashing together, if you will, given that now Yokohama have yet to decide on a successful bidder. We know now that it's down to Genting and Melco Entertainment. But prior to that, we now have this mayoral election that's coming up this Sunday. And we're looking at a candidate slate where you have 6 individuals that are running on a manifesto that says we will cancel the integrated resort if we win. We have an incumbent mayor, Fumiko Hayashi, who lost the support of the national government and the prime minister, who, for all intents and purposes, was her patron. So if you look at it that way, essentially it is saying that the national government has given up on IR in Yokohama. I mean, that's the bottom line. Because, her popularity has dropped down to such a low level that, the government, the ruling party, rather not lose the city, rather than losing the city, they rather give up on the integrated resort. So you have a very strange situation now where the government has put up another candidate, Hachiro Okonogi, and Okonogi is a very serious contender, not just because he's now endorsed by the ruling party, but because he's a true blue Yokohama homeboy. Yokohama residents know him very well. His father is a long-time legislator in Yokohama. So the latest polls are showing that he's probably going to win. Then you have a situation where you have an opposition candidate who also, for the first time, have the unified opposition parties going behind him. And that is really, beyond just the IR world that we are in, is a very serious threat politically for the Prime Minister and the Liberal Democratic Party, because if he wins, Yamanaka, that is going to have much wider ramifications for the Prime Minister, because the Prime Minister has his own election coming up at the end of next month. So the stakes are very, very high. It's not just about IR. It's just unfortunate that the IR got caught up in all of this. So, coming around to answering your original question on who we think might win, if you look at the latest polls, then it looks like it will be Okonogi. And if it is Okonogi, then it is goodbye integrated resort. It is, goodbye to Genting and Melco.
So with those two anti-IR candidates being probably the closest to winning on Sunday, are we pretty much thinking Yokohama IR is going to be out of the question?
I have a sense that if Okonogi wins, all may not be lost, because after all, he was part of what you call the IR caucus at the national government level. So he does personally support IR. He's just saying, I won't support it for Yokohama because there has been too much negative opinions against it from the people of Yokohama. So if he wins, there could be still a second win for Yokohama, as in WIND, but it would be in the next phase, the next run of cities, which we're talking about 7 years later. But of course, 7 years later, a lot of faces would change, the politics would change, and Genting may still come back again then, but it will be a very different Genting because the CEO of Genting Singapore would have long retired. But Lawrence Ho is a young guy. He'll still be around if he's patient enough. Yeah, but if it goes to the opposition, then I don't think Yokohama will be, in the reckoning at all.
Yeah, I mean, would it have to take the next election to roll around, and hopefully things have changed in the public view to allow for another pro-IR candidate to take the spot?
Yeah, but if you're talking about the next mayoral election, then that's another 4 years later. And then there are other elements that come to play, because then we'll have to look at elections at the national level that occurs usually every couple of years, because between the upper house and the lower house, every 2 years you have a changing of the guard and the balance of the majority or the super majority now that the LDP has. But as you know, the Prime Minister's own popularity has dropped to an all-time low. Some newspaper has him at 29%, which is like a record low. And in a month's time, it's his own election. So, a lot of people will be concerned, as far as our industry is concerned, that that LDP don't lose altogether, in the next couple of months, because if they lose, then IR will be canned completely, not just for Yokohama, but nationwide. But of course, then politics is dynamic, and even if they come back again 3-4 years later, like they did in 2012, then it will be revived again, right? So I think at the end of the day, the IR will never completely fade away, because at the very least, they have managed to pass the law, right? Yeah. It's just the implementation now and rolling it out that's the problem, right? So the law will always be there, and but you'll just keep running and running and running, and and there'll be more and more companies like Sands who just run out of patience and say, I'm just going to get out until you can get your act together.
Yeah, so is it all over for Hayashi and a pro-IR candidate at this stage?
Yeah, so, but never say never, Hayashi is, she's incumbent, and incumbent always have some advantage, so there will still be a slate of citizens who would still support her, because they don't care really about IR, whether it happens or not. And of course, the business community, supports her because they want the IR, right? And given that there are 8 candidates, people are hopeful, the pro-IR camp is hopeful that with so many candidates, then, the votes will be split up, especially for the anti-IR votes will be split up among the 6 candidates, and that will dilute each individual share. And then in the end, because there are only 2 pro-IR candidates and the other one, Fukuda, doesn't really factor, so she will get the majority of the pro-IR votes, which, maybe, just maybe, it could be the majority vote. But note that in Yokohama, for municipal election, the law requires that, the winner, the highest number of votes still need to be above 25%. So that could be a tall order for any one of them, actually, given that there are 8 candidates.
So what happens if anti-IR candidate, let's say Okonogi or Yamanaka, take that top spot? So I believe Japan was selecting up to 3 locations for an IR. With Yokohama out of that race, you're left with just 3. So does that mean that those 3 are going to be the shoo-ins for being able to get an IR?
That's really going to be very disappointing and very anticlimactic for this Japan IR race, because everybody, we've been so bullish about it for the last 20 years, really. And, if it boils down to finally only, just an Osaka and a Yokohama and either Nagasaki or Wakayama, first of all, the level of investment is not going to be that high. Second of all, we are missing the greatest gaming company in the world in the contest, right? And also thirdly, we've been always saying that the Japanese market is so great that even for the regional location, the rural location, done the right way, they should also be able to attract a marquee name. Even if there are 10, done the right way, every single one of them would have had a big international casino name running it. But now we've seen, in the run-up to Nagasaki and Wakayama, where, no offense to these companies, but they are not really, the top billing companies in the industry. So that's a bit unfortunate. And in the case of Osaka, I mean, there's only one bidder, and that's really just incredible. Just like Yokohama, when there's only two.
So Daniel, just wrapping up, you probably have the last word before the elections go ahead in terms of any kind of weekday media like us. Is there anything you want to, any last comments before the elections on Sunday?
Well, I'll say good luck to Genting and Melco, but I think there are still more twists around the corner. So even if it's the end of Yokohama, the bigger process itself might have, some surprise in store. As I said, more elections coming up at the national level in the next couple of months. So who knows what's going to happen? And there are some people that are already saying, hey, maybe, the Wakayama and the Nagasaki bid may not be up to the measure at the national level when they submit their bid. And that may leave still, one more license open for Tokyo, maybe.
Oh, I'll definitely have to follow that up with you a little bit later. But Daniel, thank you so much for your time. It's been insightful. It's been a pleasure. And until next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And stay safe over there in Sydney.
And that was Daniel Cheng, a gaming and hospitality expert based in Asia with a view on the Yokohama elections. Be sure to tune in to each week's Asia Gaming Briefs face-to-face series as we interview some of the region's leading movers and shakers.